And welcome back to another episode of the Your Best Self podcast on transformation basics. We have a special guest with us to hear today, Dr. Joey Munez, PhD. I want to make sure there's different. We get in the weeds here already, where it's like this, everyone calls himself a doctor. There's different types of doctors nowadays, and we need to specialize that. So, Dr. Munez has a PhD in nutrition, and I am super grateful for you to be on. So to start this thing off, kind of give us that rough 30,000 foot look at your life. How'd you get into the nutrition? How'd you do your PhD? Stuff like that, so we can get the basics.
Yeah, cool, man. So you want me to take it back to the beginning? I'll keep it short. Actually, both my parents were into living a pretty healthy lifestyle. And funny enough, I was pretty overweight as a young teenager.
I don't buy it.
And so diet culture has been pretty much part of my life since I was probably like 10 or 11 years old. Was super self-conscious about my body. My mom, I pretty much grew up going to the gym with my mom. She's always been into like being in shape and eating healthy and all this stuff. And so when I was overweight as a younger kid, she put me on a ton of diets, which started some sort of like weird relationship with food and exercise, my body and all this stuff. But thankfully, over the years, I became really passionate about health and fitness, and all of those things started to improve. I'm a really big proponent of education. Obviously, I had my PhD. I think education was one of the things that really helped me improve my relationship with food and my body and all, and health and all of that stuff. Is been obsessed with food. I actually wanted to go to culinary school at one point because I loved cooking and thought I wanted to own a restaurant and all this stuff. And then I ended up not going down that route. And in college, I was like, well, I love exercise. I love food. I was actually trying to study exercise science first. And I could talk about this for a long time, but I got kicked out of the exercise science major. I wasn't the best student. And then I was like, well, what's the closest thing to exercise science? Nutrition. And so I picked nutrition.
Why'd you wait, pause. Why'd you get kicked out? Yeah, hold on. Pause. What? How'd that happen?
How'd that happen? Okay. So essentially, it comes down to the fact that growing up, I grew up in a really strict household. First off, I've been a horrible student my entire life. Like in school as a kid, I did horribly. I think I was partially dyslexic, although never diagnosed. I got my colors mixed up, numbers mixed up. And so elementary school was tough because that's like all elementary school is. And then later in life, not later in life, but middle school, high school, I used to act out a lot because I think it just stemmed from like issues at home, and I wouldn't behave well in school and I wasn't organized. So I would do homework and stuff it in my book bag and not find it. So I wouldn't turn it in. So like didn't do well in school. I also came from a really strict household. So I had very little freedom as a kid growing up. So when I got to college and I had ultimate freedom, I just did whatever the fuck I wanted. So we'd like skip class because I was out partying till 4 a.m. and then I wouldn't wake up till 1 or 2 p.m. because we had blackout curtains in our dorm. And all this is to say that like people with doctorate degrees didn't always have their shit figured out, right? So I got kicked out of the exercise science major because there was a class that was once a week that was a seminar that was just pass or fail. You didn't have to do anything, you just had to show up. And I couldn't show up at 8 a.m. So if you skipped the class 3 times in the semester, you technically failed and had to retake it. And if you had that happen 2 semesters in a row, you had to change your major. And that happened to me 2 semesters in a row. So I just picked nutrition as a default, essentially. Funny enough, when I was in the nutrition track at Florida State, it was nutrition and food science. And food science is, think about nutrition as the interaction between food and the body, right? And nutrition science and food science is the study of food itself. So studying like the properties of foods, allergens, how to make things more shelf stable, all of those things would fall into the category of food science. And I was aiming more towards the food science route because I've always had a somewhat of an entrepreneurial spirit, and I thought I wanted to create my own food product. I wanted to create like a high protein snack. And that's what I thought I was going to do as part of my graduate work when I was doing my master's degree. And I thought I would use the opportunity of like doing research in a lab during my master's to develop a product and then market that product afterward. And I was just wrong for so many reasons. It just doesn't work that way. We can go into the weeds of why, but essentially nobody in our department did that sort of research. And I didn't know that the research that you did was essentially the research that your professor did. And anyways, I met a professor in the nutrition space who I got along with really well. And so I decided to just pursue my degree in nutritional sciences, did my master's degree because I didn't know what I was going to do with a bachelor's degree in nutrition because you can't really do anything. And I was like, well, I like school. I'll just keep going to school. And then during my master's degree, I had no idea, had no plans whatsoever of doing a PhD. And that professor that I told you that I got along with really well, he just invited me to do a PhD under his mentorship. And initially I was like, no, because school is really expensive. And he was like, well, we'll pay for your school and we'll pay you a stipend on top of that. I was like, all right, that was my deciding factor. And then the rest of it is history. I did my PhD, did a ton of work in like this word has some negative connotations associated to it, but in like the functional food space. And what I mean by functional foods is we studied like the disease preventative effects of specific foods. So we did work on how beans can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, right? So how specific phytonutrients in beans can prevent plaque buildup. We looked at how, my dissertation specifically was on how dried plums can help reverse bone degradation as we age, so prevent osteopenia. We did some work on like bitter melon and blood sugar regulation in pre-diabetics. So that was a lot of the work that I did. But I was really always interested in fitness. So after my PhD, I did a postdoctoral fellowship in sports nutrition with a professor. His name is Dr. Michael Ormsby. He's pretty popular in the sports nutrition space. And in that time, I had reached out to Dr. Lee Norton, who's somebody who I've respected in the field for a really long time and worked with his coaching company for a couple of years. And then we can fast forward to today, and I'm just a dude on social media making videos who calls myself a doctor.
And that's the thumbnail sketch. On a real note, though, John, and hopefully, Billy, if you're watching this episode right now, Joey will give you a run for your money on a Chef Boyardee. So Joey lives down in Florida. When I'm down there, we're not too far away. We met up for the first time, and he made, what did you make me?
Pork chops.
What was it? It was the pork chop. It was the pork chops.
The tomahawk
they
pork
were
chops.
Tomahawk pork chops. They were unreal. And
how'd you make them?
Shut up. Walk them through. They were so
What's
good.
the question?
How did you make them? I've never even heard of a tomahawk pork chop, but I used to be 520 pounds, and I feel like I know everything.
But it has all the meat that goes along the bone, so it's like super juicy.
Yeah.
I just seasoned them up. I don't even remember what I seasoned them with, but I like a lot of spices, so probably like paprika, garlic, cumin, maybe some cayenne pepper, usually a little bit of brown sugar to help it brown and be a little bit sweet. And I just grill it on super high heat until it's charred and like medium in the middle, because I don't like pork well done, even though most people eat it well done. And we had
me neither. I don't like
some
pork
veggies,
well
right? Some broccoli or something like that.
You made blanched broccoli. I never blanched anything until you explained that to me. Yeah. And then you grilled it. And then you put a little bit of honey at the end when it was all done. You put a little more extra honey on top of the tomahawk. It was so good.
Fun fact: David doesn't eat any of his food seasoned. I don't know if you know that. So you must have really blew his mind, because he has no idea what paprika even is. You know,
David boils chicken breasts.
Yeah, he boils chicken breasts. He thinks salt is spicy.
I say that about my mother. Thank you very much. And the joke is, my mom thinks water's spicy.
Yeah. And David thinks ketchup belongs on steaks.
That is the whitest thing I've ever heard.
Yes. David is the epitome of the whitest thing you ever.
People ask me to make meal videos, and I'm like, you don't want to see my meal videos.
No, you don't.
What are you eating today? I put lay down a thing when I'm thinking very high protein, low calorie. I lay down a thing of pickles. I put 4 servings of tuna on top with some barbecue sauce and mustard. And like, that's high protein, high fiber, low calorie. And I'm like, yeah, no one wants to see that shit.
No, because it's disgusting.
So jokes aside, I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people struggle to eat healthy, because they don't know how to make healthy food taste good. And it's like, man, if you just learn very simple cooking skills, healthy food tastes better than not healthy food. You just got to learn how to prepare it. So for my clients, I put together a meal prep guide, and the meal prep guide like tells them like what foods to meal prep, but there's a section on like cooking techniques that are super simple so your food tastes good, right? And part of it is like, season your shit. Seasonings are 0 calories, and you can make food taste really good. And like, don't boil chicken, saute it with a little bit of oil, get it nice and brown, right? Like, if you learn some simple cooking techniques, healthy food is delicious. You just got to know how to prepare it correctly.
Absolutely. No, 100%. Because if not, you'll be eating tuna and mustard on fucking pickles like David and calling yourself Jack. But yeah, that's nasty.
We all have our choices of how we like to eat. judged hard in this live right now.
So anyway, let's circle back because we're going on a tangent. A big proponent as to why we wanted to have you on the podcast was to talk about and to totally slaughter diet culture and the fad diets. So what are some fad diets that you're seeing pop up on social media and in pop culture right now that maybe gotten a little bit out of control with, you know, the misconception of how good they are, and what are some that you think need to stop?
Yeah. Okay. So great question. What fad diets are popping up, really popular, and they make a lot of crazy claims, and in many ways they can be harmful, right? I want to start this question by answering quickly, like, why are fad diets an issue in the first place, right? Because maybe a lot of people are like, hey, this diet worked for this person, like, why didn't I do it? So when I talk about having a healthy diet, I try to break it down as simply as possible. And I think a healthy diet needs to meet 3 requirements, maybe 4. 1, it needs to meet your nutritional needs, right? And meeting your nutritional needs is synonymous with supporting a healthy body as well, right? Because meeting your nutritional needs means not going under your nutritional needs, but also not going way over your nutritional needs. So when we talk about nutritional needs, we're talking about caloric needs, but macronutrient and micronutrient needs as well, right? And a lot of fad diets are deficient in some of those nutrients, right? For example, if you talk about keto, a lot of people argue that carbohydrates are not essential, but I would argue that carbohydrates are certainly essential, and we get a lot of micronutrients from carbohydrate-rich foods that you're going to miss out on if you're following a keto diet, for example, right? So a lot of fad diets miss on that first point. The second point that a healthy diet needs to meet is it needs to help you manage your hunger, regulate your satiety. Because a big issue that people struggle with when it comes to weight loss is that they feel like they're starving because they think they just need to eat less. And the amount of food you eat is not necessarily synonymous with how many calories you're consuming. You guys know that those things are different, right? And in reality, the worst approach that you can do, I think one of the worst approaches to weight loss is like not modifying your diet and just cutting the amount of food that you eat in half because you're going to be starving. And you're not going to be able to stick to that, right? And so a lot of fad diets also don't really emphasize consuming foods that help you regulate hunger. Things like protein, things like fiber, fruits and veggies, etc. All of the basic things. The third aspect of a healthy diet, to me, needs to be enjoyable. Because we don't just eat for nutrition, right? Like, so much of life involves food. And so the way we eat should be enjoyable. And this just means like not being overly restrictive. And fad diets are defined by the things that they restrict. Right? Like every single fad diet is defined by the foods that you don't eat, right? It's kind of like counterintuitive. And if you're following a fad diet that is restricting particular foods that you eat often because of cultural reasons, because you enjoy them, because of your family, right? Like it's going to be way harder to stick to that diet. And that's the main reason why I say that fad diets kind of suck for the most part. It's because they miss out on one of those 3 key requirements of a healthy and sustainable diet. And you don't have to follow a diet with a name to meet those 3 needs. Actually, you probably shouldn't. You should just focus on quality nutrition, stuff that you guys have probably already covered in this season of the podcast. So if you ask me what fad diets do I see that are really popular at the moment, that really grind my gears, it's probably carnivore, like first and foremost. I think a lot of the other ones have been around for a really long time, just like they're, like keto.
So is carnivore just keto with a fancy name now?
No, I mean, keto, you can eat other stuff besides just
argument.
meat, right? Like keto, you can eat avocados and stuff. Like carnivore,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
no plant stuff, right? Like no plant stuff at all. Like keto, you can get away with eating some like almonds and stuff like that too. Maybe an apple every once in a while if you're like limiting. It's about limiting the total carbohydrate content, right? So you can slip in these foods as long as you're not getting out of ketosis. But the whole carnivore thing is just that, like, is the idea that plants are bad for you, which is fucking crazy, dude. Like, no other way to put it. Seriously, no other way to put it. Like, using common sense, veggies are not bad for you, right? People that live the longest on planet Earth have a diet that's mainly composed of fruits and veggies across the entire planet, right? Like, people who live the longest eat mainly plant-based foods. I'm not saying that a mainly plant-based diet is what's optimal either, but if we just look at the people who are healthiest, who live the longest, that's what their diet is. And there are some limitations there too, because diet's not the only important factor for health and fitness either, right? Like lifestyle, exercise, overall happiness, like those things matter too.
Yep.
But it just shows that like fruits and veggies are not bad for you. And then it's the other aspect that meat is the most nutritious food on the planet. It's like, yeah, meat is very nutritious, but broccoli is also very nutritious. Almonds are very nutritious. Beans are very nutritious. The truth is that all foods have unique nutritional benefits. All foods are rich in certain nutrients and they're deficient in other nutrients. We know that fiber is incredibly important. You're not getting fiber from meat, right? And when I was talking about earlier about fad diets being defined by restriction, that's an issue because if we look at the nutritional research and we look at dietary patterns that are associated with improvements in health, like inclusivity is associated with more improvements in health, right? Diversity in diet. So like eating a wider array of foods. And we're not talking about like highly processed foods here, obviously. But we're talking about including more minimally processed foods. So meat, dairy, cheese, yogurt, fruits, veggies, legumes, grains, like including more of all sorts of foods is going to have a positive impact on your health. Why? Again, because different foods have different nutritional benefits and it makes sense to include them all. And so when you like completely eliminate stuff, it's just silly. So to answer the question, man, like carnivore is the one thing that really bothers me. And it's because they're really good at cherry picking too, right? There's like all these dudes in the carnivore community that are like, look at this research study showing that keto is this, or look at this research study. Like, if they'll pull up a study saying that veggies have defense chemicals, and like they'll use that as evidence that vegetables are bad for you. And it's like, dude, this one study is just pointing out the particular chemicals that are present in vegetables. It's showing nothing about the interaction of consuming the vegetable with human health. And the research studies that actually show benefits, they kind of just like disregard those and say it's epidemiology and that's not viable and like a bunch of BS, right? So that's the one, man. That's the one that really bothers me.
So I was just gonna say, when it comes to one of the things too that's tough with the carnivore is like it hits so many good things in the sense of high protein. It tends to lean on whole foods, and then people see incredible results in the sense of physique changes because it's high protein, big calorie deficit. Great things happen. So people create these great physiques, and they don't go into six-pack abs is not the only metric for health. And like, oh my gosh.
Six-pack abs is like a terrible metric for health, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Exactly. Because when you're that lean, it's like, actually, Joe, you just made a video on that whole bit.
Dude, I make a video on that. I apply it once a month.
Yeah. Because like you get heckled by a lot of the fit bros of the world where you're strong as shit and you have a great physique. Do you have abs? Not necessarily. Like you're what? 14% body fat ish?
Probably around there.
Like, yeah. And it's like, but some of the carnivore fit bro community is like, oh, you're not 9% body fat. You fat piece of shit.
I used to want abs, but then I grew up.
If I get a pump and take a picture with really good lighting at a gym that has really good lighting, it looks like I have a six-pack. That's the thing. Like all of these people that you see online, it's really good lighting. They have a pump. They're sweating, right? They look great. It's like, dude, if I take my shirt off here at home, I don't have abs. If I take a picture at the gym with good lighting, I straight up have a six-pack. It's like, people don't realize that. And so there are obviously individuals on social media that only post that kind of content and only post those kinds of pictures. So it makes it seem like they look like that always, anywhere.
24/7.
And it's not true. And some people do look like that, and that's cool, but it literally doesn't mean jack shit, right? It doesn't mean you're healthier or unhealthier. It just means that you say fucking no to ice cream and pizza every once in a while, which is a miserable way to live life, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think also like we live in a timeline in society where like we have so much useless information at our fingertips, whether that's good information, bad information, or indifferent. So like you can create an argument for anything, right? Like you could create an argument that water's bad, and you can get enough information off the internet that you could almost kind of prove that water's bad, right? The other side to that is like everybody right now kind of just feels like their opinion matters most over everyone else's, no matter what. And I kind of come from the mindset of like, I have a little bit of common sense, right? Like, and I really lean on that common sense a lot. So we are a human race that has been around for quite some time, and humans back then didn't have access to easy food, right? And like they were eating fruits and vegetables and as well as meat. But like fruits and vegetables was getting them by, right? Like Native Americans, they were eating corn as a big part of their diet. And you can make the argument now that like corn's horrible for you. You know what I mean? Like it's just not a good vegetable. It doesn't sustain you. You don't break anything down from it. So like I think we need to get the focus off the gym bros on social media and kind of just like instill a little bit more common sense in what we do, right? Like it's just not it's not that hard to kind of just use the
like I will have to say, John. So Joey, common sense. Do you like my pickle? Do you like my pickles tuna?
Well, no. There's a difference between common sense and being a fucking gross person. Like, there's definitely a huge difference.
Meal, Joey, on a nutritional basis, what would you rank that?
Tuna, pickles, and what else?
A bed of pickles with 4 packets of tuna, and then mustard and barbecue sauce.
Just tell him he's gross. Just
check it out.
I don't get it either.
The thing is, I could eat pretty much anything. I would put a little mayo instead of mustard and barbecue sauce and put it between 2 slices of bread. Have it like a sandwich.
There you go.
But hey, to each his own, you know.
That's what I did at his house. I took the chicken like a normal person. I put a little bit of barbecue sauce and a little bit of mayo. And I had myself a happy time. And then you have a homeboy over here who's just like, he just take the mustard.
My brother-in-law. Check this out. My brother-in-law, often his breakfast is straight black coffee and pickles. Like just straight dill pickle, just eats a dill pickle and like drinks black coffee. That man is a savage.
That's
respect.
He might eat glass.
I need to put context to this. I'm talking about when you're in a major cut mentality where it's like every calorie matters and
there's
like
really no
prioritization.
There's not an excuse
Listen,
to be
that
found here.
only matters if you're maybe getting to like 5% body fat and stepping on stage. Aside from that, fuck that, dude.
Do you really like it? Is it something that you actually enjoy, David?
I do it from time to time. I would say
because you enjoy it, or because you feel like you have to do it.
I like that meal. It's I like with a fork and I cut it up and I think it tastes delicious. I do it, I would say bi-weekly.
Dude,
well, again, we are talking to someone who doesn't season their food.
Eat straight ground beef with some boiled eggs and some peppers and maybe like a fruit on the side, and I'll post that and people are like, "You're disgusting." I'm like, it's all good. I like it, dude. My buddy in college used to. This is just a straight up poverty meal, but he used to take white rice, put honey on it, slap that between 2 slices of bread, and he would just eat a honey and rice sandwich.
My father-in-law does that. Yep. Rice sandwich, a macaroni sandwich. My father-in-law does that all the time.
That's wild.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's insane. Yep.
That's wild. All right. So going off the diet culture world and getting back us on track a little bit, because obviously you guys can heckle me about my food choices till the cows come home. What from...
Hey, so I don't know what to tell you. You're fucking disgusting.
I'm actually intrigued on this one because you're in a new dynamic as of late, Joey, when it comes to, I was actually I texted John this because I thought this would be a good conversation from there because it's different dynamic. Having a kid, you are having a child now, the kid's starting to have access to different foods in the house. When it comes to nutrition, diet culture, and all this kind of stuff, how are you finding that balance between what kids like to eat, what you like to eat, what you're trying to teach your kids in that whole process? How is that looking right now in like that fad diet culture? Because I mean, I have some friends and family that it's a nasty relationship with food. They're even teaching their kids to a degree, fear. And then how do you find that balance? What does that look like to you?
So first and foremost, I have a really good episode on my podcast on this with Dr. Taylor. I'm blanking on her last name right now, but she's an expert when it comes to child nutrition, essentially, on like how to approach that situation in a way that's not going to cause damage, but you can still help them meet their nutritional needs, because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? On social media, her tag is growing intuitive eaters. So the question is like, how am me and my wife approaching nutrition when it comes to our son to ensure that he's meeting his nutritional needs, but not necessarily causing any sort of weird relationship with food or anything like that? It's pretty simple, man. We just like don't emphasize it too much. We know what healthy nutrition is, so we feed him healthy food. We make sure he's active, and I think activity is so underrated. I think being active is incredibly important. And then we just kind of just let him enjoy what he wants, right? Like we'll give him some chicken and maybe some strawberries, and he'll eat that. And then if he says he wants some crackers, we'll just give him some crackers. Like, no big deal. He wants a little bit of ice cream, we'll just give him a little bit of ice cream. Like, I think a lot of the issues come when there's maybe a little bit too much control. And I'm talking from experience here because like during my childhood, my mom was extremely strict when it came to food. And I was like, no, you're not going to eat that. You're going to eat this. And I was like, no autonomy at all around food. And thankfully, it kind of like worked out fine for me. I know it doesn't work out that well for other people, but that's our general approach.
Aren't you fucking blessed?
Like, say that again?
I said, aren't you fucking blessed?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, dude, there was a period of time. So when I was saying that I was overweight when I was younger, I remember I think I was probably 12, around there. We went to the doctor and they did some measurements, and the doctor told my mom that I was pretty much obese. I think I was like 1 or 2% body fat away from being obese. And from then on, I was just like strict dieting for years. And I remember for a while, like my dinner would just essentially be a whole rotisserie chicken, like without the skin, just the meat. And like, that was it. I wasn't allowed to have carbs because my mom did carbs made you gain weight. So it was just like that type of food, right? And it would be like beans and like chicken. And just like, I ate so much damn rotisserie chicken, dude, for years. And so I don't want a similar experience like that for myself. Like, my general approach is encourage him to try stuff. He's only 2, by the way, so he's still really young. Like, these things could change, right? But we encourage him to try stuff. I'm big on just modeling behaviors, man. I'm not big on control. I think people make their own choices anyways. And if you control a kid's choices when they're young, they're just going to rebel when they're older anyways, because that's human nature.
Absolutely.
And my general approach is model the behaviors to the best of my ability. Do the best I can to encourage him to make healthy food choices, allow him to just, have whatever he wants in moderation. And what I mean by moderation is, like, if he wants some crackers, he loves goldfish. We'll grab a couple goldfish and just put it on his plate. And like,
damn right.
It. Right now he's at an age where he like doesn't understand that there's more. Like, if he eats something, he says more, we'll just be like, oh, like, that's it. Let's go play with your car. And like, we'll take him out of his seat and go play. And he kind of just forgets about it. These things could change as he gets older. But for me, like, so another thing is people often blame their kids for their poor dietary behaviors. I hate that as well. Like,
that's right.
Kids are not the reason you do unhealthy things. If anything, it's the other way around, right? So like, thankfully, I don't necessarily call it self-control. I just like have no desire to eat a ton of goldfish after I finish dinner, right? So I'm big on us eating dinner together as a family because I think that's really important. There's also really good research showing that people who grew up having dinner together as a family tend to have better health outcomes as well. I model the behaviors that I want my son to adopt. Like, I usually always eat some sort of protein, some sort of carbs, some sort of veggies. I'm also not a freaking robot, and like, we'll go out and grab some ice cream, and we'll have some ice cream together. So mainly just comes down to modeling behaviors, man, and like making sure he's eating relatively healthy and just not putting so much of a freaking focus on food. Like, that's the thing. People just put too much focus on food when it's a component of health, but it's just one component.
Well, I think because of, different backgrounds and cultures and different upbringings, I think that's why we over romanticize food. And that's how we kind of get caught up in that cycle. My background, obviously, I'm from New York. I'm old school Italian. Both my parents are Italian, whatever. So Sunday dinners were, huge in my house. But at the same time, Sunday dinners were carbs with a side of carb, with a side of carb, with a side of carb, doused in red sauce. So, that element was just like, when I was losing weight, it was really hard to talk to my family as to why I'm not participating in Sunday dinner the way that they are. You know what I mean? So like, for a long time, it was like, why aren't you having pasta? Why aren't you having this? Why aren't you having that? And there's me with grilled chicken salad and some rice. And it's like, well, this doesn't fit my goals. It's not that I don't want to have it. It's not that I don't appreciate the fact that you've made it. It's just, this is not what I'm doing right now. And to kind of get everyone on board with that is obviously really, really hard. And obviously it causes a little friction in some households. And I feel like that's why a lot of people get deterred on this weight loss journey, on this fitness journey, because they can't find that sweet spot and that what I call time and place. I say that there's a time and place for everything. And they can't really get that concept that like, okay, maybe you can't have Sunday dinner every Sunday for a month, but you can have Sunday dinner, once a month, twice a month, and then, supplement the rest of it with your normal eating plan. It's okay to do that. People aren't either an all or nothing mentality.
Really quick, John. It's also like being okay with your plate looking a little bit differently, right?
Absolutely.
Because this is one thing that I used to do stupidly when I was younger, was like, I would not want to go to my aunt's house for dinner because I knew it was going to be like rice and beans, and I thought carbs were bad. And so like I would avoid that. Right. And it's like, yeah, there's rice and beans and there's plantains and stuff, but there's also a huge salad on the side. And like typically people do what? They load up on the carbs. It's like a very small side of veggies. It's like, I much rather, and everybody has a different approach, but I much rather still partake and enjoy and just change up the way my plate looks and have a ton of veggies and maybe a smaller amount of the rice and beans and the plantains, even though I really enjoy those things and loading up on the protein. Right. So I never really encourage, like, personally, missing out on stuff. And I'm sure it can be difficult in different situations, John, because if like you're with your family and your plate looks totally different than everybody else, they might pick on you for that, right? Because at the end of the day, man, people just like, I don't know. I don't understand why people are nosy or like get in other people's businesses. And trust me, man, my family is the exact same way. I come from a Cuban background, so it's like very similar custom in terms of like food is a big part of the culture, right? But just being okay with setting boundaries, it's difficult, but just being like, hey guys, like, this is important to me. I would appreciate if you don't comment on these things. And even then, sometimes those things don't help because some family members just are the way they are. But just being strong enough to have your plate look a little bit differently, right? Because you can still partake in Sunday dinner. You can still enjoy time with your family. Because this is the thing that people need to understand. Like, being healthy doesn't mean you can't enjoy yourself with family and friends. Because if that's the giveaway, if that's the sacrifice, it's not worth it in many situations. For many of us, why do we want to be healthier? So we can enjoy more time with family and friends, right? Like, because at the end of the day, what's life all about? Being happy and being around the ones that you love. So like most people would define happiness in some extent with that in mind, right? And it's like, if trying to be healthier is taking away from the thing that makes me happy, which is spending time with my family and my friends, spending quality time together, and dinner is part of that, well, then that makes it harder to be healthy. And that might be a reason why you don't stick to the healthy choices, where it's like, hey, still partake, just make some small changes, right? Just make some small changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that one's always weird. We talk about that quite a bit when it comes to nutrition, and everyone has their opinion on what's good, what's bad, and setting boundaries. There's just something to be said about friends and family that people just create this bigger emotional attachment to, like what they think is more important than, like, if you were walking on the side of the road eating a drumstick and some homeless person goes up and goes, "That's bad for you," you wouldn't bat an eyelash. But when it's Uncle Bill, you're like, damn it, Uncle Bill thinks I'm eating something bad. And like, there's this huge emotional connection difference. But I agree. John talked about this is part of what we talked about on nutrition, on the Nutrition 101 in relationship with food. We talked about in that series. If every meal is about fear, and every meal is about hiding from the world, and you're afraid to be in public, and you're afraid, like, you're just setting yourself up for this binge and purge cycle that most of these people get caught up in. Because when it comes to extreme weight loss, building a calorie deficit is not that's not the problem. Like, losing weight and burning more calories a day than you eat is not the problem. This is the newest fad diet coming out today, which is fasting. It's a little bit older, but like water fasting. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all this weight through fasting. It's so much magic. It's like, because you didn't eat for 7 days, Jeremy. Like, it's not rocket science. You don't eat for 7 days, you're going to lose some weight. The problem is how do you build that into a sustainable lifestyle you can create, like, a good relationship with food and yourself over the next 35 to 40 years?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And so just the idea of like this hyper restriction, fear. It's funny how the most quote unquote educated that learn that so many foods can kill you and harm you are usually the most chill of them all. Going, yeah, Hostess cupcakes probably shouldn't have 10 a day, but one a day, one a week, sure, why not?
Yeah, but it also,
well, that's what diet culture really is fear-mongering, right? Like, that's the whole basis of what it is now.
I was gonna say, like, education is definitely not the only piece, because there are so many people who are nutrition doctors and are really unhealthy and overweight as well. And I would see that at nutrition conferences all the time, where people who were leading, like, big time researchers doing all this research on weight loss and health, and they themselves are unhealthy, which goes to show how much like emotions play into it, lifestyle plays into it, perhaps family dynamics, perhaps overall happiness, right? Like, these things are interrelated. It's difficult, man. Like, you know, oftentimes people talk about, like, if you're really overweight, if you're really unhealthy, if you're unhappy, like losing weight and getting healthier can help those things improve, can make you happier. And to an extent, sure, that could be true. I'm a bigger believer that it's the other way around. And I've had this conversation with my wife before, that like people who are really unhappy with aspects of their life that are outside of health, perhaps that for them, that unhappiness manifests in the way they eat or their dietary behaviors, right? And perhaps getting those things under control and trying to improve quality of life and happiness outside of their physical health can have a very positive and direct impact on their physical health. But where do you start, man? It's difficult, right? Perhaps listening to things like this, listening to educational podcasts, trying to be inspired by people like both of you guys have had incredibly transformational journeys that are incredibly inspiring. Like people always ask me in like the coaching space or the education space, like, how can I get to where you're at? And it's like, man, just work hard and try to educate yourself, right? Like listen to people who have done the stuff that you're doing, be inspired by them, try to follow in their footsteps. It's not a step-by-step blueprint, but I think that's probably one of the most powerful things that you can do. Like, because if you don't have people in your life supporting you and keeping you accountable, trying to create that digitally nowadays is really helpful, right? Like somebody listening to this who does struggle with their weight, just listening to this right now is helping, right? Because it reframes the way they're thinking about certain things, and making it a ritual to like listen to stuff that's helpful, you know, maybe on a daily basis, has really positive impacts. It's these small little behaviors outside of nutrition, right? It's like, how should I eat? Well, maybe don't focus so much on how you should eat, and like try to improve your mindset by listening to people who have gone through this before. And that will, as a byproduct, help you change the way you eat, right? It's funny how like really so much about health, like people hyper focus on what they're eating, and it has to do a lot more with other stuff that doesn't have to do with what you're eating. That will then impact obviously the way you eat.
I think people hyper focus a lot on like, well, obviously you have the social media front, right? So like every day you're looking at this one big highlight reel, right? So you build this mindset that like everyone is perfect and everyone is doing everything by the book. You know, they're drinking water and they're eating air and they're just having these perfect bodies and whatever. But it's like, I'll use myself as a perfect example. Like I'm down 300 pounds. I had another 40-pound loss that was unexpected because of health reasons and whatever. And last night and the night before, I ate an entire bag of Old Bay goldfish, and I didn't think twice about it. And I totally crushed these bags. And like 3 years ago, I would have totally went off the rocker because of that, right? Just lack of knowledge, lack of education, not knowing any better, and just feeling like everyone who's in this space is absolutely perfect. And you know what happened after I finished both those bags of goldfish? Nothing. You know, like I got up the following morning, I did my cardio routine. Diarrhea. You know, I went about my, diarrhea, 100%, 100,000%. But it's like, I didn't regain 300 pounds the next day. Gonna make the same mistake, but it wasn't a mistake. Right. So like, that's what we also like society needs to get away from, is painting this with this brush that like food choices are right. Like you have a slice of pizza, you made this utter fucking mistake, and now everything is ruined and you're a terrible person and you know nothing about nutrition, you know nothing about diet, and you're ultimately going to fail. And it's like, you keep instilling that in people, and then they white knuckle everything, and then you want to know why 3 months into your diet program you're fucking failing and you're binging and you're going out of control.
No, 100%. I mean, like that's the big thing with me is like, and it's fun too, because Joey, context with a John, this is gonna blow your fucking mind. Honestly, when I found out about this, I'm like, this idea that people who are considerably overweight are just, they lack discipline is so, like, again, discipline matters, but this overly simplified, well, you're just lazy, you're just whatever. John, after your original VSG surgery, how many years did you go without having a slice of pizza? 7 years without having a slice of pizza. When he told me that, like, this was a couple of years ago, so at the time it was like 4. I was like, whoa. You haven't had a slice of pizza in 4 years? And I was just like, I couldn't even fathom that. Even like, and I was like, the fact that people still think that it's ultimately a lack of discipline it's like, oh my gosh, it's so far from the course. It's ultimately usually the opposite. There is no balance at all.
No, yeah, no
It's
balance.
all or none. And learning that, and none of us on this podcast have been perfect. We still drink some alcohol. We still do these things.
Except for
But
David. David doesn't do anything.
That's part of
Twice
just being healthy, right? Because like I don't even like using the word being perfect or not, because not eating those foods, I wouldn't define that as perfect. It's just not, right? Like eating these things is part of our normal lifestyle. Hey, if you choose not to eat those foods and you're cool with that, that's fine too, right? It's just like people put way too much focus on specific choices, and it's just not that big of a fucking deal. Like, listen, if somebody wants to eat pizza, cool. If somebody doesn't want to eat pizza, that's also cool, right? Like, we don't need to rationalize it as like, I don't eat pizza because it's unhealthy. Maybe you just don't eat pizza because you really don't want to and you want to prioritize the healthy foods, whatever. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, the thing is, people put too much weight, too much value on these small little choices that don't matter. When it comes to the discipline thing, it mainly comes from the business gurus, right? It's funny because it comes more from the people that are not in the fitness industry. Although there are some people in the fitness industry, like mainly the roided out dudes, that are just like, if you're fat, you're not disciplined, like blah, blah, whatever. But it mainly comes from the business gurus, right? And it's so ironic because if it came down to discipline and you're a business guy, why are you not the richest man on earth? You're just not disciplined enough. You must not work hard enough. You must not be good enough at business, right? Like, it's like, dude, that's just not what it is, right? Everybody's on a different journey and people are just at different points of their journey. That's all it is. Because I think it's really easy to relate these things to business because people understand with business, like, you start here, you put in a lot of work, over time you can make more money, your business grows, right? There are people that are just starting off their business that are way more disciplined than the people that are like already successful, right? The same way that there might be people who are struggling with their weight who are way more disciplined than the people who like are fit and healthy. I wouldn't say I'm disciplined at all. Like, that's not true. I'm disciplined, but like, I don't do these things because of discipline. I just like enjoy living this way. I like eating healthy food. It makes me feel good. I like going to the gym. I like the way it makes me look. I like the way it makes me feel. I like going on walks. Like, thankfully, throughout my life, I just had a very positive relationship with living a healthy lifestyle. I've always been positively rewarded for living a healthy lifestyle. So I've created a lot of positive rapport, essentially, right? Positive emotional feelings when it comes to being healthy. So for me, like, being healthy is easy. But I know for a lot of people, it's not. And it's funny because, like, a lot of these dudes who are in great shape, it's not fucking disciplined, dude. They love the gym, right? It's hard to get them away from the gym. Like, I have a hard time not going to the gym. Like, I have to be disciplined not to go to the gym. And it's not a bad thing either. Like, it's great that you can do these things easily, but it's just so silly to say that it just comes down to discipline. It's not even just like these conversations. Research clearly shows this too, right? It's not a lack of focus. It's not a lack of discipline. It's the same thing as like, dude, it's the same thing as a drug addict and just saying like, just don't do drugs, right? We don't treat drug addicts that way. I don't get it, man. I don't know why people tend to pick on people who struggle with their weight so much and like scrutinize them so much.
Well, because I think it's an easy out, and I think it's something that every walk of life has dealt with in one way or another. Body image, weight issues, whatever. And I think it's really, really easy for someone to kind of break someone down and point out the faults about themselves that they don't like in somebody else, if that makes sense. But also to what you just said, I think it was on a Rogan podcast. And I'm going to totally butcher the quote, but it was like, food addiction and food in general is the only addiction where like you still need the substance every day to live. Like, you don't give a crackhead a little bit of crack every day, but you still need food 3 times a day or whatever in order to live and function and whatever. So it's like, it's a really fine line for someone who is addicted to food, who is, past the point of no return, over 500 pounds, someone like myself back in the day, to kind of just be like, all right, pal, you're not eating X, Y, and Z anymore, or you're not doing this anymore. But by the way, you still need to eat in order to function. And it's like, what the fuck do you mean I still need to eat in order to function? Like, you just told me I can't eat anymore, and now I still need to eat. And like, now I'm not going to enjoy eating. So now I've created this enemy within my own head that now food is bad, eating is bad, enjoying food is terrible, and fuck you if you like food.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And then as everyone who doesn't have a weight issue is just like, wait, I ate an ice cream sandwich last weekend. Didn't even bat an eyelash. But as soon as you see a 450-pound dude eating an ice cream, you're immediately like, you fat piece of shit.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's how that works.
Right. You really gonna eat those Doritos? Like, come on. I don't even like Doritos.
I don't even like Doritos. All right, first and foremost, like Joey, I appreciate you coming on here.
Absolutely.
You give a whole different dynamic. Obviously, off screen, we go way sciencey. No, I'm just kidding. We don't really go that.
I'm actually really proud of you guys for not getting too much in the woods here with the big science terms, and I thought maybe you guys were gonna have a little experiment or something.
Least sciencey science guy.
Cynical Ballerman.
So you would, I don't know, man. Part of it is like people just try to seem smart. I think that's an aspect of it. And people get too lost in the weeds of like small little details that don't really matter. So yes, I have the most rigorous scientific background you can have. Yeah, I try to be as practical as possible while still helping people like understand the nuance of science, because it is important, right? Because if like you don't understand the science stuff, it's hard to like understand why, certain things may be good or certain things may be bad or whatever.
So before we wrap this up,
very sciencey.
No, I feel you. I say, you know what I mean a lot. Like my wife will listen to my podcast afterward, no matter what I do. And she goes, how many times are you going to say, you know what I mean? Nobody knows what you mean. You need to actually like tell people what you mean. But before we wrap this up,
what's the worst fad diet? Oh, you know which one. And that was
you know. Yeah. All of them.
All of them.
Speaking of fad diets, before we end this podcast, what are 3 fad diets that we are not bringing with us into 2025?
Carnivore,
which should totally be okay.
Carnivore for sure, man. I don't. The thing is, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really know many fad diets outside of like carnivore, keto, maybe like paleo. What are some other popular ones?
Frugivore.
Frugivore. Dude, is that even?
I sent you that video, didn't I?
Because it's not like super popular, right? Isn't like in order for it to be a fad diet, it has to be popular, right? Because I could say right now, like, don't eat anything besides fucking kiwis and almonds and make up a reason. Like, that's not popular, right? The thing is, I'm actually
intermittent fasting, low carb.
I'm not so I would say diets that you shouldn't follow for sure, carnivore, and I wouldn't recommend keto for the most part, even though I think some people have success with keto. Here's the thing, man. I don't like to discourage people from trying things either. Because the thing is, like, if somebody does keto and they like it and they see results and it works for them, cool, bro. Like, that's fine, right? That's what I was saying about earlier. Like, I think people just try to rationalize things too much. The only issue I have is when people say, this is the way that I eat, and it's the best way to eat because of XYZ, and XYZ are like scientific reasonings that are not scientific at all, right? And so that's the issue that I have. Like, even with carnivore, we can acknowledge the fact that scientifically it's not the healthiest diet, while also accepting the fact that some people go carnivore and they really enjoy it and they see some good benefits, right? That's the thing. I don't discourage people from trying things. Try things if you enjoy it, if you can stick to it. Those are probably going to be the most important things. If you have a lot of weight to lose, this particular diet helps you lose weight, you can argue that that diet is healthy for you. Sure, maybe down the road you try to do things a little bit healthier. But here's the thing, like, I also discourage trying to be perfect off the get-go, because we've all gone through these diets. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say never do keto because I did keto before. I'm not going to say never do this because I've done it before. I've tried it all, right? And I've like discarded the things that don't work. So I think it's also, people through their journey are going to try different things and see what they have success with and see what they don't have success with. The issue that I have is when people like rationalize things with science that is not based on science. Like carnivore saying that
insulin
fiber is not necessary and veggies are few. Like, that is just bullshit. Just say you like eating meat and it works for you. Like, that's all you have to say, right? But obviously that wouldn't be a viable business because all these people sell carnivore books.
Fear. And at the end of the day, when it comes to nutrition and education, like we talk about diet, like you said earlier, when it comes to diets, most diets are defined by what you can't eat more than what you can. And like they're influenced by the fear. It's like you sit there and go keto. When push comes to shove, when you see the keto, when you see the fad diet marketers out there online, are they saying, hey, eat lean protein because it helps you feel fuller longer? No. They're saying carbs, they're killing you. The turnip, it's killing you. Be careful. Like, and that's the hard part is like the turnip is killing you.
Where the fuck did you even pull turnip out of your ass? Like that was the main fucking vegetable that popped in your head was
I wanted
turnip.
to throw something random out there, so I would turnip.
This fucking guy, man.
But that's the whole
The
thing.
Granny Smith apple. Don't eat the Granny Smith apple.
Oh, I still love it when I had someone in my comment section saying organic or non-organic foods made me fat. And I'm like, you're right. The non-organic apples I was eating, that's what fucking did it. I got to 400 pounds. Damn it. I just didn't eat the GMO-free apples. You're right. The fucking GMO apples is what made me be 400.
Yeah, dude, because the GMOs destroy your hormones. Sweet. That's the thing, right? Like, that's the issue with the misinformation stuff. It's like so overwhelming, and people have no idea how to determine whether it's correct or not. Versus using some
You know what
common sense.
GMO stands for, right? Stands for
What?
get mega obese.
Get mega obese. Did you just come up with that?
I did right now in this podcast. So if anyone
Will you
uses
put it on a
that,
t-shirt?
yep, get mega obese.
Mega obese. Dude, that's a good
Mega
t-shirt.
obese.
GMOs. That's actually a good t-shirt.
GMOs. Get mega obese. And then you're like before and after picture. All right. We're doing
Well, it's gonna pop up on someone's Instagram now, like tomorrow. Watch.
All right, as we close this thing up, Joey, I appreciate you being on here. One of the things for everyone listening, guys, remember, nutrition, keep it simple. Obviously, yes, it's about good relationship with food, good relationship with yourself, calories, protein, eat more fruits and vegetables. It's not rocket science. I had this past weekend, a friend of mine made a homemade apple pie. Friggin' delicious.
He just lied. He doesn't have
Obviously.
friends. He doesn't have friends.
They're acquaintances. I paid for those. They're acquaintances. And so it's super important to know I had some apple pie. It's not a big deal. Oh my gosh, there's sugar in that. It's fine. And remember, this whole process is a you versus you game.
Good.
This isn't about my journey. This isn't about John's journey. This isn't about Dr. Joey Munez. As you've heard, we've all had different little experiences, but this is about taking you where you're currently at, and it's irrelevant where you're at right now, and moving you towards a healthier and happier version of you. That's what this is about.
Joey, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, man. First and foremost, thank you guys so much for having me on. David, you know, I always love shooting the shit with you and acting kind of smart. But all jokes aside, I'm so happy you guys are doing this, man, because I think it's so helpful for people to get advice from people that they relate to. I feel like as somebody who's in this field from more of like a professional standpoint, like I'm educated in this field, sometimes I have a hard time relating to people who struggle because quite honestly, I haven't had the same struggles, right? So I'm so happy you guys are doing this and just sharing your story and sharing practical things that really help people. And I'm happy that you guys gave me the opportunity to share a little bit of my expertise here today as well. In terms of where can people find me? On social media, all social media at Dr. Joey Munoz. David, we'll have a little lesson after this on how to pronounce my last name.
Munoz, not Munez.
Dude, you really? I'm looking at this dude's last name the whole
Munoz,
time, and I'm
Munoz.
like, he's butchering it. And this dude is just being nice enough to let him go. And I'm just like, if it was me, I'd be ripping him in the ass.
I'm never going to let it go now with David.
My bad.
On the podcast,
Munoz.
it's the Dr. Joey Munoz Show. And have a coaching company. We focus on helping people who are slightly different than the population that you guys work with, really focusing more on the fitness side. Yes, we work on helping people lose weight and improve nutrition, but we really focus on optimizing, building muscle mass, and focusing more on the training side of things, helping people learn how to build muscle and get jacked using science. And you guys can check that out, or check out my coaching company at fitforlifeacademy.health, and you can check out our services there.
Thank you, brother.
I'd like to put it out there. There's no enye in your Riverside. I know what an enye is. You have an enye in your name, right?
You're
So
such a
that's
fucking
true.
cracker. Stop. You're the biggest white
do
person I
have
know
an
right now.
enye, yes.
Stop.
See, it doesn't say in the
Stop
Riverside, so
Stop. Stop.
I blame the
Stop.
Riverside.
Thank you, David Roden. I appreciate you. Everyone give it up for David Roden. This fucking guy. All right, anyway, I appreciate everyone who's made it to this part of the podcast. And David's not going to sign off on this one. So just remember, it's a you versus you game. Stay beautiful, stay sexy, stay accountable, and we'll talk to you soon.